everyone. Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I am excited for our conversation today with our guest. Before I introduce you to our guest, here's a quote just for this episode. You're not a victim. You're a warrior. Tre Tipton. Our guest today, you give me 100 men, 10 of them shouldn't even be here. 80 of them are nothing but targets. Nine are real fighters, and we're lucky to have them, for they make the battle. But one is a warrior, and he will bring the others back. Our guest today, friend of the Culture Matters podcast, high performance athlete for the lion's share of his life, not only running from adversity, but running into the trenches to pull others out of that adversity. He's won awards around the idea of mental wellness, mental health, mental fitness, positive mental attitude. He's not only a leader in the one, I'm wearing the hat, the one team media empire, but one of the best MCs I've ever experienced. And I haven't been around in many mirrors lately. He's damn good at it. The one and only Tre Tipton is here on the Culture Matters podcast. I'm a little upset with myself that it took this long to get you on, but I'm slower than you, so physically, and so I couldn't get you. So thanks for coming on the show.
No problem. Thank you for having me, Jay.
I was actually watching one of your podcasts, the many shows, many podcasts, and I loved what you said. You're not a victim. You're a warrior. It was like Tre Tipton's story with on athletic aesthetic with Vinny. And so I had to use that.
For sure. For
What's the
sure. I appreciate
philosophy
that.
behind that? What's your philosophy behind that?
To be honest with you, the philosophy behind that honestly came from being in a position of uncomfort, right? Being consistently in a position where I felt like I was going to lose myself and I wanted to call things a quit, right? And then when I really looked at it, the whole world was telling me that, oh, you're playing victim because during the time process when I was seriously suicidal and going through things, mental health wasn't that cool yet. You know what I mean? People didn't actually take it in as something serious. You know what I mean? So like during that time period, right? A lot of people say you would play victim, and I let them understand that I'm not a victim, I'm a warrior. It took a lot for me to get here, and it took me a lot to stay alive. And then on top of that, right now in the newer age of mental health, man, I feel like the stigma has gone so far, which is nice, but at the same time, people are really leaning into the victim mentality, right? I can't get through anything, but it's okay that I'm going through something. It is okay you're going through something, but the fact that you decided to wake up and keep pushing forward allows you to be a warrior, not a victim, right? So, like for me, man, I always encourage people around me and the people that have the chance to come across me, man, that you are a true warrior of life, not a victim of life. Your situation doesn't have to control you; it can mold you. It can build you into the next part of your warrior legacy.
Are you, is part of what you just said leaning on in the past, the culture was far less aware or empathetic
Hmm.
around mental well-being. However, but it also has gone too far one way to be overly.
Right.
If I listen carefully, what you said, so am I understanding that correctly? You're saying in the past, it may have been too little empathetic, too little aware of mental health being a thing, an actual thing that matters, and also now the pendulum may have swung far too one way on the opposite extreme, where it's overly sim what amenable to, or
Right.
almost. That's what you're saying?
Yes, sir. For sure. I would 100% agree to that. Simply because, like, right now, it's a great thing that people are getting help. Let's start there. Like, it's a great thing that people are finding help, and it's also a good thing to talk about nowadays, right? But on the backside of things, nobody's letting these people know that they're also fighters, right? You're a warrior. You've gotten through a lot, and you're still getting through a lot, right? So, like, it's pushing on that narrative because the narrative right now of mental health, when people hear that stigma, they get uncomfortable. You know what I mean? They immediately assume mental health is mental illness. And that mental illness, we're talking about depression, anxiety, and all these different things that people automatically attach to mental health. Now, although that may be true, right? There's two sides of everything. There's two sides of physical health. there's two sides of emotional health, and there's two sides of mental health, right? So you're mentally fit or you're mentally unfit. Now, in this circumstance, people say, well, how do you show whether or not you're mentally fit or unfit? Well, you'll know just based on how you act and how you react to things, right? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you writing? Are you reading? Are you reaching out? Are you reaching out to your tribe or your circle? These are all important things to my mental health regimen. So
Hmm.
it was something that I was extreme about because I know I talk a lot about it, but I'm also very serious about my mental health regimen, just as serious as I am about my physical health regimen.
If did your mental battles, uh, if at all, have any positive or negative influence on your high performing athletic career?
Oh, for sure. For sure. I think for most players and most athletes, right, you'll see a decline in some athletes just in the NFL, right? You'll see guys like going from star studs, right, to maybe having an average year for them. Typically, that happens when there's a major change in life, right? Not saying that they're still not doing the same things or doing the right things, but when you have that major change, it's time for your body, mind, and emotional side to be able to adapt, right? Adaptability is everything when it comes to sport, but also when you're having new things happen to you. Like in some circumstances, some guys, they just had their first child ever, right? That's a whole new abundance of problems that we never even talked about or discussed as athletes. You know what I'm saying? So, like, guys getting used to that, that can cause a different type of play style, right? In some cases, it can cause problems on the field just simply because you're not fully there, right? You're still working through the process to get yourself there. So, like, for
When
me
did you
personally,
first, or go ahead.
no, for sure. For me personally, it was just it got to a point when I realized my mental health was bad, right? And then when I would go on the field, I was also having a tough time understanding the plays because I was sitting there too focused on things that were outside of my current job. So when I learned probably around my sophomore year on how to deal with that and how to maintain my mental health through taking time to really see on how what's the proper ways to cope to help myself get through the next day, right? And then on top of that, to be able to practice, I had to learn certain concepts to keep me there, right? One concept that I used, Jay, was a really corny, cheesy concept, but it kept me on the field, man, was if I was out on the field and I had a bad play, I would just start naming out colors, like the things that I saw, the things that were on the field, just so I would forget about the last play, right? Or if I would come into the facility and I had a really bad home day, right? Like there was something that happened at home that I couldn't control. I would find different ways to one, I would start by writing out, two, I would go into naming colors, and then three, I would record myself talking to myself on what was bothering me. Then ask myself the question, is it really that important? You know what I mean? So like those were things that I found that helped me, but I realized that around my sophomore year.
Before you became successful at what it was you were doing, and in this case, football, do you think problems helped you?
Oh, for sure. For sure. I think they motivate us. I think they help us grow, man. I think obviously we all go through something, right? But as of recently, I've been really sitting with this thought process that I feel like it reached me just this year, like just this year, like maybe 2 weeks ago. I'm not gonna lie to you, like it was a process that really slowed me down. It was just that your pain is not for you, and that really caught me off guard. It was like, okay, what are you saying to me, God? What are you saying right now? Your pain is not for you. And when I say your pain is not for you, obviously it's for you in the moment, right? It's for you to figure out, it's for you to get through and to take your time to grow through, right? But at some point in time along the lines of our life, we meet somebody who is like us that goes through a situation similar, not always 100%, but similar to the things that we were stressing about during those hardship times or periods and moments, right? So when I realized that, I was like, wait a minute, slow down because this might be difficult now, but this is a growing phase. You cannot grow, Jay, without a little bit of pain and a little bit of strife. It's not possible. You know what I mean? So, like for me, learning through my trials and tribulations has allowed me to grow faster than what most people would think or be naturally
Why do
used
you
to.
why do you think we can't grow without some pain or strife? Or
Personally,
how
I
does it
think you
help
can.
us grow?
I think it helps you grow the most is because it teaches you on how to deal with adversity. That's something that's a guarantee, right? Adversity of all things is a guarantee to every human being in life, right? So through adversity, the more times that you learn on how to get through that adversity and that strife, right, you find growth in handling bigger situations, right? Some people get anxious in those type of tough situations. Some people get depressed during tough situations, right? But as you go through these different trials and tribulations, you learn a new asset that you might need to help you grow, to grow forward when something bigger comes your way, right? And I've had proof in that. When my mom passed away, it didn't seem like it just was the truth for me that I was struggling, yes, but I was also growing in such a way where I felt like, okay, this is the man that she needed me to be. This is the man that I needed to grow into in order to help my family and help the people around me. During the time that I realized that, Jay, for sure not. You know what I'm saying? But on the back end of that, as time went on, I started to realize, like, oh, okay, my pain maybe wasn't for me because I helped somebody out through the same situation that was severely struggling with dealing with their family's death, right? Helped them out because I knew almost exactly what to do just by being through it, right? So for me personally, I genuinely believe that your pain helps your growth because even in pain, right, there's a yin and yang into everything, right? There's a positive and there's a negative to everything. So even in your pain, there's a positive outlook to it. One of my favorite things to say is there is no obstacle, there's only opportunity, right? The obstacle is just there for you to learn so you can understand what the opportunity really is. So in those moments, I started to find myself looking at these barriers, right, as hurdles. You get what I'm saying? These barriers that I had putting up or something along the lines has put up, right? Not barriers that stops me from going where I'm trying to get to, but they're hurdles. I might have to jump over and do some different moves in order for me to keep going forward.
When did you pick up your first football?
I was 5 years old. 5 years old when I first picked it up, 25 years old when I first stopped.
Do you remember the first time you picked it up, where you were, what you were doing?
100%. Like literally like it was yesterday. I was 5 years old. I remember my cousins were playing outside and I wanted to play with them, but they wouldn't let me play with them, right? And I got so mad, I made it upon myself where I would just go play catch with myself like all day for like hours, right? And I was like, I'm gonna get so good that they can't not let me play, right? Eventually, I did get good enough, and I was eventually able to play. But those moments I never forgot because they kind of like built the athlete in me. That's why I take coaching so seriously, right? Because coaching is one of those spaces and areas of framework where you get the chance to mold people outside of their parents or outside their natural community. So in doing so, I had somebody mold me into the athlete that I am, right? When I first picked up the ball at 5, I wasn't really good, like actually good at the sport until I was like 7 or 8, right? Because my uncle had really put himself into me. My mom, my dad, they've all taken time to help me get to where I needed to be. So as time went on, I got better at it because I put so much time in, I put so much work in. I did what I felt was necessary for me to get to that next level.
Now, what was the first team that you were on?
KVL. I was on the KVL Mighty Mites. I'll never forget it. I was on this team where wasn't the best kid. I was playing in dirt, you know what I mean, plucking grass, but I had a good time. You know, I wanted to play. I wanted to be a part of it. But then I didn't genuinely get good until about 2 years after that.
So how old was that before the 2 years after when you got good? How was it? 8, 9, 10?
I was around like I was probably like, yeah, around like 7 or 8. 7 or 8, I got really good fast, like because I started to
Oh,
really like pick it up. Yeah, I started to really pick it up, and I was playing with a lot of older kids, playing with kids in the neighborhood. We had this game called Throw 'em Up, Bust 'em Up, where it's basically like 1 versus 11, and you literally got to juke around until you get into the end zone. That helped me tremendously because I end up getting really good at making people miss, right? So I would definitely say around that age of like 7 to 8.
and what was the first legit team that you played with?
The first legit team I played with was when I was 5 years old for the KVL Knights. It was the first
Really?
contact football I ever played.
5 years
Yeah,
old.
bro. 5 years old, played contact football. I'll never forget it because I got hit so hard, I wanted to quit the first day. So, like, I'll never forget it.
Why didn't you quit?
It's just not in me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't think it was ever in me, even from when I was a little kid. Like, there's times I would even like scream at my mom, like, I want to quit. I want to quit. But like, it takes a lot for me to do that because I never wanted to be seen as the person who would give up on themselves. Forget quitting something just to quit something. I just didn't want to give up on me. Right. And I felt like if this is something I said that I wanted to do, right, then we got to do it. Doesn't matter how hard it is, doesn't matter how difficult it is. And that, to be honest with you, Jay, like, that helped me in my future career. And I had no idea because there's plenty times I wanted to quit, right? But by not quitting and still playing my role and still taking a step forward, I was able to achieve some incredible things.
How many hours do you think you played and practiced between 5 and 8?
Jay, you know what? I've never thought about that. And you asking me that, like,
That's,
that's actually a really good question. That's a lot of hours,
I
yo.
want to, I'm trying to become good at what I'm doing. So I want to know how many hours you put in at 5, 6, 7 years. You see what I'm saying?
We played what, 14 games? I was training probably 3 to 4 times a week on my own, 2 hours per practice. Did that for 20 something years. I'm probably looking around 10,000 hours, probably more than that,
In
way
your
more than
career.
that. In my career, probably way more than that because I spent a lot of time on my own trying to get better. So I can honestly say it's anywhere between 10,000 to 100 hours, 100,000 hours. And I can't name it exact because there's times where I was like, how can I put this? There was times where I would go blank and black out during workouts. And the reason why I would say that is because like I used to use working out and training as a trauma response, right? Like as in I'm working out and training because of there was pain at home I didn't want to deal with. So I'm grinding as hard as I can to fix that problem. That's why I'm a type of person. Like, don't come to me with just a problem with no solution. If you're coming to me with a problem and you have a partial solution, I can work with you because I was that type of person. It's like if I had a problem, I wanted to fix that problem and find a solution to that problem. So, in doing so, the hours really range because there's times where I was really down on myself and I'm spending 6 hours training just because I just was running away from the things I was going through. So again, I would say anywhere between 10,000 to 100,000 hours because there's a lot of times that happened.
And what, like when you got, by the time you got into high school, would you say that you were very good?
Oh man, when I got to high school, bro, I was a killer. I was a full blown killer. Like there was not a single person that could step on the other side of me, whether it be basketball, baseball, track, football. It didn't matter what it was. I wanted to compete, and I wanted to compete at the highest of levels.
And like, so what did a day look like when you were driven by competition?
Oh, a day looked like when I was in high school, college, or pros. All three.
Let's start with high school. Yeah.
Okay. So high
Like I'm
school.
trying to visualize who, what I could have accomplished had I not put in 5,000 hours into World of Warcraft in high school.
Oh man, what I was doing. So a day for me kind of looked like this, Jay. There was at least 2 to 3 times a week where I would low key sleep in just because I'd be up all night just working on some things. But I would walk to school. My school's about 8 miles from my house, maybe a little bit less. And I would walk to school, right, certain days, and I would go to school, go to class, go to practice. After practice, I would work out for an additional 2 hours and then get a ride home. That was about 2 to 3 times a week. And then on the normal weeks when I'd actually be able to catch the bus, I would get up, get on the bus. I would go into school, go to practice, train for 2 hours, right? Get a ride home, sit in my playbook for like an hour, and then read for like an hour. So like it was always like I would say it was nonstop. And then on the weekends, I would go compete. It's either I was playing a football game, I was playing a basketball game, or I was doing something else.
So the days where you had been up super late, you might walk 8 miles of school, then do the school, then do the practice, then do the workout, then eventually get
Sure.
home late. And then the days where you go
Hmm.
in a bit later or earlier rather, you do the school, then you do the practice, then you do the workout, then you do the reading and the plays. And that was all Monday through Friday, basically.
100%. Then
And then the
Saturday, Sunday, I
weekend,
was
you're
playing
finding
games.
games like with other human beings.
Yes, playing different
Well,
different
obviously,
games.
other human beings. Trying to think, because like Monday through Friday is practice with the team,
Hmm.
and then mental practice and physical stamina building
Yes,
with the working out.
yes,
And that's an all-encompassing thing Monday through Friday. And then Saturdays was with your team against other teams.
exactly.
Saturday,
That
Sunday.
just Yeah, it just depends though, because sometimes if we were like, for example, that's with football, that was more of that type of schedule. We'd play on Fridays, but then when we would get to season, we'd play Monday, Friday, and have practice. I believe Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at the time. So there was a lot of differences that would change based on the seasons, just because I played a lot of different sports. And then also when I was in track season, it was like I'd be training for football because I was preparing to go get a scholarship in my last 2 years. So my last 2 years, it was like track, football training, homework, eat, sleep, do it all over again.
Wow. Was it helpful to play different sports to master your main sport?
100%. I believe that everything translates, right? I even think being in school, right, translates to playing sports, right? Because how much knowledge can you take in at a short amount of time? And that helped me tremendously because I was a studious kid, right? I wanted to be good in school because I liked the challenge of competing with others. But because I was so studious, it was easy for me to pick up playbooks. So, like, if you would give me a playbook and you would say, like, you have X amount of time to get this done, it wouldn't be that hard for me because I would sit back and I would really study it like I was studying going to school. And I enjoyed it.
What classes were your favorite of academic?
History was one of my favorites just because I believe history tells the future. Um, that's why I love that you talk about Alexander the Great so much because I'm a big guy that was into the Roman Empire, and then on top of the Roman Empire, I was also into the Mongolian Empire a little bit when I was in high school, and then also Greek mythology is one of my also favorite things to look up and study. And if you're gonna ask me what my favorite Greek god was, it was between Hermes, Zeus, and Poseidon. And then
Why? Why those three?
Glad you asked. So Zeus, because he was the king of the gods, although if you really read into Zeus, Zeus wasn't a great god. Like he could be somewhat of a dick every once in a while. You know what I'm saying? And then Hermes was the god of speed. So I was like, yo, I'm gonna be the fastest guy out there. And then Poseidon, I've always found myself extremely comfortable around water. I'm very peaceful when I'm around water. It's hard for me to be angry when I'm around water, and I don't know why. I have no understanding why, but water has always given me that sense of just appreciation and peace, even though I almost drowned when I was a kid. So I just love the water. It's just amazing to me.
When you used to study playbooks, was
Mhm.
that something that was unique to you, or did you see was there a common denominator of the best players that did that too?
I think I was a junkie, so like I would always look up what the best were doing, right? Like who is considered the best? What are they doing to be the best? So when I found out that Tom Brady and all these guys as a young age were deep inside their playbook, so deep to the point where they can almost tell their coaches on what they should be running. I wanted to be
Wow.
that guy. I wanted to be that guy.
What do you think the advantage was to them to do that? What's the advantage to know the playbook that deeply as a player? We're
No
not a coach,
anxiety.
we're a player. Why is that
Yeah,
valuable?
it's valuable because it doesn't give you anxiety, right? There's all sorts of small anxieties to life, right? No matter where you're at. But I learned immediately anxiety is killed with preparation. When you have that
Yeah.
preparation, you don't have to worry about what's going to happen because you've already prepared for it. I'm not worried about what's going to happen in the future because the preparation's already been put down. It's already been put through. You know what I mean? So I really got involved inside of the preparation, like prepping for games, looking at defenses, seeing the different things that they were doing. So when I got to a game, I could play unconscious and competent. And when I say unconscious and competent, I want to be able to play so fast that I'm not even thinking, I'm just reacting because I know exactly what to do and when to do it. It's a part of me.
You said anxiety is killed by preparation.
Yes.
I never thought of this before, but I wrote this down. Anxiety is killed by preparation and it resurrects excitement.
I like that. I like that a lot. I like
Because
that. That's
I know
true.
myself, if I'm prepared, I can get excited. If I'm not, I'm a mess.
We all are, man. Like when you feel, and again in sports, when you feel unprepared, especially when you play a sport that's like a gladiator sport, right? I was obsessed with gladiators. One of my favorite gladiators movies was Gladiator One. Just watched Gladiator Two, and then also I don't know if you ever seen the series Spartacus, but that was my thing growing up. 'Cause I really enjoyed the gladiator feel. So in my head, I was like, okay, well, if I'm gonna go out here in the arena and be the man in the arena, I got to be prepared to kill or be killed. So if I'm not prepared and I'm anxious, I can get a teammate hurt or I can get myself hurt. So I have to be prepared in order for me to go into the arena and compete. So for me, it was a necessity because if not, I was anxious, I was nervous, right? All these different feelings because I just wasn't well prepared. I had not watched enough film. I had not spent enough time on the enemy. So when I knew that, that's when all those anxiety things come in. So when people ask me, like, how do you speak so well? It's because I've done it so often. I prepared for it. I've spoke 1,000 times. I've wrote and spoke to myself 1,000 times, right? So like when I get up on stage, it doesn't bother me because I've spent so much time doing it. So again, that preparation allows me to help kill a lot of my anxieties.
What do you think? What's your advice to the listeners that are thinking right now, I'm not prepared.
Mm. Honestly, you got to identify the problem that has you anxious. What is the problem? If you can't identify the problem, you'll never be able to be prepared for what you're actually preparing for. Once you can identify the problem, then you understand what you need to prepare for. After you have identified the problem, right? Now you have to look at least 3 to 5 solutions to that problem. For me as a receiver or any position you're playing, we're always looking for the best solutions that work best for us, right? So after I have identified the problem, what are my 3 best solutions? After I get to my best solutions, I'm looking at my actions. What actions can I align to these solutions? See what I'm
You are a
saying?
receiver.
Yes.
What's the difference? And how does it complement one another? Being a receiver and a quarterback. So first, what's the difference of the psychology? And then how do they complement one another?
Well, we complement one another simply because the quarterback can't be successful without us, and we for sure cannot be successful without the quarterback. Now, the difference in ideologies is this: the quarterback is understanding the full offense and also reading the defense. As a receiver, you also understand the full offense, but you're focused on your job and where the defense opens up for you to be able to do your job. The quarterback's job is be able to meet you at the point where you both have the agreement of where you should be. So, for example, if we call a play, right? I know where I need to be. The quarterback knows where I need to be. It's my job to get to that point, however, I get to that point, because he's counting on me to see me. Because if not, there's 6 bad ones that are on the other side of the team who are trying to kill him. So I got to put him in the best position possible, and vice versa. He has to be on time. If he's not on time, you kill the play. The best thing about football is that everybody has a job. It doesn't matter on how great somebody says they are, or doesn't matter if they're the star player. Nobody can be a star player if everybody does not run the play. If there's one person that doesn't run the play while everybody else runs the play, 10 out of 11, that play won't work because it gives up, or the percentage of it working is a lot less, right? Because that play simply just won't work because that one person didn't do their job. Now it's different in other sports, right? Basketball, there's 5 on the court. One guy could really take over if the team gears itself just to make sure he takes over. When you start adding more and more guys to a team, it's hard just for one guy to do a job, right? Baseball, even if you have a really good pitcher, he could take the whole system with him, right? You can have a bad infield, bad outfield, but if he's a dog, that keeps you at least in the game, right? In football, you can have a good quarterback, you can have a good running back, you can have a good receiver. If one lineman doesn't do their job and our quarterback gets sacked, there's nothing we can do. He couldn't get us the ball in time. Or we have one bad lineman, we hand the ball off to a running back, there's nothing we can do because we still couldn't get the ball off in time. Because we have a defensive lineman that's in the backfield. So when you really talk about doing your job and holding people accountable and also being held accountable, if you are not detailed in your work, somebody around you is going to get hurt. And that's the one
Amen.
thing. It's the one thing. Scary thing, but it's the one thing.
What what would you say were elements throughout your career as a high performance player that you saw the coach model that created stickiness amongst the team? The offense, defense, QB, receiver, lineman, all that,
Right,
right? Stickiness.
right.
What
I
were
think the
things
coach,
that they did that was like stands out?
I think the biggest thing that stood out to me that I seen was there's a coach named Brennan Marion. I kind of emulate a lot of the things that he did with us when I coach my kids because he got us to be able to love playing the game of football. When you love something and you love doing it, it's hard to get you to stop doing what you want to do, right? And once you get to that level that you love it, you'll get obsessed about it. So what he did really well was he wanted to know what we thought was fun. Then he wanted to incorporate that fun into playing the game because then we will love the game and we'll love each other. Then he would create such a culture where it was almost a priority to take care of one another, right? Where it's like, yo, you got my back. Yeah, well, if you got my back, prove it out there on the field. If you get a chance to block for me, make sure they don't touch your brother, right? It's like having that little brother always or that big brother always. If somebody came up and touched your brother, you better fight back. So he created such a culture around having one another's back, but also playing for one another. And then the number one thing that he used to say that really used to sit with me because it sat with me because I genuinely believe this is who my mom was. He would always say what it was this. He said, be as strong as your mother. He said the mom is going to take care of the child whether the father stays or leaves. She's going to
Hmm.
work 3 jobs. She's going to work 2 jobs. She's going to do what she has to do in order for her to put her 2 feet in the ground for her children behind her, right? That's why you even see when it comes to just being primal and you hear about um, the female of species always being the more dominant within the species. It's simply because of their innate ability to sit there and withstand tragedy, difficulty, and still be a mother. Well, when he would always say, be as strong as your mother, a lot of us guys, we didn't have really great father figures. I had a good father figure, but a lot of guys that were also around me did not. Right. So, in being that and in having that, and you would hear be as strong as your mother, you're like, that makes sense because mom did everything. She found a way, she made a way. So for us, we were like, wow, like that means a lot. That makes a lot of sense. And then on game day, energy is infectious. I genuinely believe this. Energy is infectious. The right energy in the right place builds champions. The right energy in the right place builds champions. And the reason why I say that is because, like, when you have a group of people excited, like you said, excitement, excited about what they're going into, they're enthusiastic. People feel that, whether it's a good speech or bad speech, whether it's an amazing moment or a terrible moment, they feel the energy in which you're presenting. So when you have that excitement about doing something, it's almost impossible for somebody to be somber around you. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like, yo, are you really gonna have this much negative energy while I'm this far up right now? Like, and you feel that, you understand that, so you want to give that back. Those were the things that I stole from him personally. That I was like, wow, like to me, you're one of the better coaches that I ever personally been around, just simply because of that. Now, from a distance, a couple coaches that I really admire and also have had the opportunity to meet and almost value as a mentor was Mike Tomlin. And the reason why I really value him when he talks about it is the fact that no matter what people are saying about him, right, out there in the media, Mike Tomlin stays Mike Tomlin. He comes to practice the same way. He comes to work every day the same way. So as a man from man to man, you feel it upon yourself to stay detailed, to stay locked in, to be the man that you need to be because there's other people around you who are doing the same. So that goes back to that energy being infectious. If that's the energy that you're bringing me, I have no choice but to give back that energy or move out the way. It's one or the other. And we have that understanding when you work with certain people.
How about the inverse of this? Some of the attributes of a coach that is making it more difficult for the team, for the QB and the wide receiver to read each other's minds or
All right. I would say honestly, the best thing that I've ever learned that taught me on what a bad coach is and a good coach is kiss. They would always say kiss. So what is kiss? They say keep it simple, stupid. Right? Keep it simple. And why do I say that? Is because you have to be able to keep guys together. A lot of bad traits that I've seen in previous coaches where they try to dictate everything. They try to they try to be the person that always had their hands on everything. Like Brian says, if you have a company and you're doing everything, you don't have a company, you have a job. It's the same scenario for coaches. If you're trying to dictate the offense when you're not an offensive coordinator, you're killing the guy that you put in position to win, right? You hired him for a reason. Now you showed him that you don't have faith in him. A man without faith becomes defeated.
mm.
So when you see that, right, it's hard for guys to get their feet wet. Also, I've seen this in coaches where they put guys to the side based on what they're doing for them lately. And why do I say this? It's because people, especially of the newer day and age, we are a part of instant gratification always, right? So it's always about what have you done for me lately? When you get in those type of situations and you're dealing with kids or you're dealing with players, right? Players will play for you if you show them how much you care about them. When you show them about how much you care, then they want to know exactly what you want to tell them. When you don't care, they can care less about what you know. So when I realized that and I've seen that, right, I've had coaches in the past where they would put guys aside who were injured just because they're not able to actively do something for them, right? So then those kids would follow suit. They would actively act in those ways. So they would either digress as a player or progress depending on where they're at in their lives, right? But you would see more guys become less and less actually wanting to function within the team because they don't feel a part of the team. When you push people out and you put them on an island, doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're in a company. It doesn't matter if you're on a football team, a basketball team, or you're just within any type of business, right? When you put people on islands, they will either become an enemy or they will leave said island. So like you got to really see on what you're trying to do, and what you're trying to do, you have to have a everybody's coming with mentality. If you don't have that mentality, you're gonna put kids and you're gonna put guys in bad situations. That's even in companies, right? Where if guys don't feel like they're a part of the company, or they don't feel like they're a part of the vision that's going forward, doesn't matter what you're selling them, they ain't buying it. You know what I mean? So like those are some of the things that I've seen in certain coaches that were like, you could definitely do a better job of being a father. Let's talk about it. Because originally, like when you're a coach, you're fathering a bunch of young men or young women. You're being, or you're mothering a bunch of young men or young women, depending on what type of coach you are, right? So when you're in those positions, you really, really, really have to take note on what you're saying. In my eyes, and I know I'm speaking long on this, Jay, but this is something that I'm really passionate about. In my eyes, the head coach's job or the CEO's job is not to be able to do everything. It's to be able to maintain and manage people. Can they maintain and manage the vision? Can they maintain and manage the staff? Can they maintain and manage the goal? Right? Because the vision and the goal are two different things to me. The vision saying on how we're gonna get there. The goal is the end piece, right? So, like in doing so, if we can't find the vision, if we can't find the goal, then I'm not following you. And if your words don't match your vision and don't match the goal, and you're showing me otherwise, I'm for sure not following you. You know what I mean? So I know that was long winded, but that's just that's where I'm at with it.
What do you can you elaborate on the actions matching goal?
Yeah, so for sure. So exactly. When you're speaking, right, about a goal that you have in mind, but instead of you being 100% all in, you're only 70% in, then you expect the people around you to be 100%. It don't work that way because people can tell that you're not all in, especially when you're talking about your dream. If it's not your dream, right? Or say, for example, these kids don't believe in us going to a national championship because they've never done it,
Wow.
right? You have to live, breathe, and walk like such for them to believe in exactly what you're trying to get them to believe. If I tell you right now we're going to make 100 million, but you don't show up to work, or you never come talk to us, or you don't talk to this side of the room, bro, you might make 100 million, but in my eyes, we're not doing this together because you're not putting us together with you. You know what I mean? So it's just making sure that your actions align with the goal. If your actions show that you got B level qualities, you're gonna get B level results. If you have an A level goal with B level results, I don't understand how you think you're getting to that A level goal. It's just not going to work, right? But you also have to have the proper leadership to either A, push those people, or the proper foundation to push yourself. And to be
Mm.
honest with you, you need both to be greater, to be legendary in my eyes.
The goal is where we're going, the vision's how we're getting there, and one team. What what are some of the reasons we, like, so in this case it's you and me,
Right.
we're well positioning ourselves in the marketplace by having this conversation through this these computers, on this podcast, through these social platforms. How is what we're doing together positioning us in your mind to compete with the other teams out there, with the other um, entrepreneurs out there, the other businesses out there? What's your view on how we're positioning ourselves to win the championship? Right? Why are we on
I
this
think
podcast? Why are we having this conversation? Why is it going to be picked up on Spotify and Instagram and Facebook and all of this? And how is that going to get us closer to our goals?
because I think it'll get us closer to our goals, Jay, because we'll find us. Right? I'm not looking for everybody. I'm looking for the few. The few. I don't need the everyone. I need the few. What are we talking about, Jay? Because we're putting ourselves out there, right? We don't know what we don't know. But what we do know is if we put ourselves out there, somebody's gonna watch this who is just like us and is looking for a group of us to get connected with, right? For me, we're positioning ourselves to be able to reach those people, to give those people a voice, an opportunity to be the best version of themselves. When you find a conglomerate of people who are striving for success, you get an army. Once you have an army, a lot of the battles that feel like wars end up being a lot more minuscule than what you had thought they would be.
Mm.
So in those moments, right, when we go and we speak and we're having conversations like this ain't gonna be for everybody. Excuse me. This ain't gonna be for everybody. It's just not. Not everybody's gonna watch this. Not everybody's gonna want to watch this. But the ones who do watch and the ones that do understand and take in the conversations that we're having, those are the ones who are also gonna come back and say, "How did you? When did you? Where can you? How can I?" Right? They're gonna ask these questions on how we can all collaborate on the same boat, how we can all move on the same ship, right? So for me, this specific podcast is going to rise all ships because the ones that are supposed to be with us in the water will be there, and those who are not will probably get destroyed by somebody else, or they're just not on our team. They're on a different team, and that's okay too. But the ones that we bring aboard our ship, they at least now know what kind of people they're getting. So now there's no questions, there's no misunderstanding. You see what type of people we are. You see the type of questions that we're having, what type of conversations that we're having. You see all the above. So there ain't no lies happening here. There's not no mask being put on. The people who are really going to understand us will listen to this and be like, "Whoa, I got to get around those people." And that's what I think what we're doing is so special.
For businesses that have not looked into a podcast, for example, what impact do you think that can have tangibly on their business? And I ask
Oh,
that specific because, right, business owners thinking, I need to feed my family. To get that, I need to win games. They may not even be thinking about the championship.
right.
They may not even be thinking about the game. They're thinking about the play. And they
Mhm,
don't even have a playbook necessarily. They might
mhm.
just have a bunch of, they're not even sure if they're the coach, the quarterback, or the receiver. They just have some people that also, are accepting. I'm thinking of the 5 million small businesses in the United States that likely don't have a podcast, for example.
Right. So put
How
this in
do you think it
perspective.
could tangibly impact their playbook, their play, their players, their, what do you call it? Like their positions, their
Right.
games, their championships, their all of a sudden I learned more about football in this conversation than I did for my whole life, by the way. It's crazy. I'm like starting to like the sport and I really don't want to watch TV, but I digress. I digress, right? But yeah, so that's my question is, how can it impact the business?
Oh man, it can easily impact the business. I'll put it this way in sports terms. Since we're already on the topic, let's keep it here. Say for example, I'm the best athlete at my high school, right? By far, by none, right? There's no question. I'm hot stuff. Everybody wants to be around me. Everybody wants to know me. Here's the thing. There's a million of you out there, right? So what are you going to get yourself? What are you going to do for yourself to allow yourself to be recruited? Right? You have to get yourself out there. You have to put yourself in a position for people to see you. Now, let me bring this back to business. How does getting recruited in business align? Let's talk about it. You might be the best thing since sliced bread in your community, right? Everybody knows you, but there's only so far that lid's going to allow you to go, right? Because you're only going to make so much money because people don't know who you are outside of the community in which that you play in or the team that you play for, quote unquote, right? So in order for you to grow as a business, you're eventually going to have to market yourself. You're eventually going to have to put yourself out there. If you're as good as you say you are and you're going to compete at the highest of high levels, then put yourself out there to compete against the most highest competition. Because if not, you won't get the proper opportunity. So why is the podcast so important for you to do? Podcast might not be the most extremely important for just anybody in the company to do, right? More times than not, you really want to have the person who actually has a voice within your company and or the CEO, the CFO, whoever may be in leadership, but most importantly, a person who's comfortable in front of a camera, right? But beyond that, you got to understand what that person is now doing for your company, or if that person is you, what you are doing for your company. You're now giving people an opportunity to see what type of company you are. This is better for your employees. This isn't better for your clients. This is better for your coworkers. It's better for your coworkers because they know who they're working for. They're better for your future employees, right? Who want to come work for you. And it's better for your community simply because your community needs to know what you're doing for the people out there. And last but not least, it's good for your clients because the clients get to see what type of upstanding group of people you are. They feel more comfortable working with people that they know, right? When people just get cold calls from people that they don't know, they're less likely to actually continue the conversation. But when they know you and they feel like they've seen you 100 times or 1,000 times, they think that they know they're getting what they're getting exactly verbatim when they see you. The only way that that happens is if you put yourself out there. So if you don't use media, how are people seeing you? You want to try a billboard? Billboards haven't been used well. Again, I'm gonna say well. I'm not saying that they're not still being used. I'm saying well for a very long time, right? There's no more yellow book. There's very few ways that you could really advertise your company and what you guys are doing. The best thing about social media is you can also be creative with it, right? Showing people the funny side of your company, showing people the serious side of your company, or the more direct side of your company, right? Showing the details in which that you guys work, which is also important. When you can showcase on how detailed your team is and how hard you work for your customer, clients are going to naturally come in because they see how hard you work. They believe in your process. They believe in what you're willing to do. So going back to football, as I had said before, right? How would you get yourself recruited? You got to go to all these colleges. You got to put your face out there. You got to be on social media showing yourself off. The same thing with a business. You got to put yourself out there. You got to go to the conferences. You got to speak up. You got to have the podcast. You got to put yourself on social media. Because if not, who will? If you're as great as you say your company is. So I hope that answers your question, Jay.
What would you say in closing you want our listeners to do today?
Mm. I learned this from you, Jay. Not to always speak so fast, to think about it for a second. So I actually want to think about it. I think what I would go with, I say it on every podcast that I do separately from the podcast that we work on, is treat a little bit different. Treat your obstacles as opportunities. I'm gonna say it again. Treat your obstacles as opportunities. And the reason why I want you to do that today is because there's going to be an obstacle for you that's going to come about. Where's the opportunity in the obstacle?
Tre, you're a national treasure.
Thank you, Jay. I hope I taught you some football today.
If you're listening to this, where can people follow you on Instagram?
At Tre Tip06. You can find me literally on all platforms with that same tag. So check me out.
And if those want to connect with you around one team and understanding how to partner and work together, best way to do that?
Hit me up at Tre.Tipton at oneteammedia.com. So important. Hit us up because we want to work with you. We want to help you out. We also want to tell your story. It's so important for you to tell your story to your community, your clients, and your employees. So let's do it. Let's tell them how cool you are.
Tre, you're the man. I thoroughly appreciated this, and that's anyone that knows me knows that means a lot because I was not watching the game last night. No offense to anybody. Hope that doesn't offend anybody. If you
But your wife.
yeah, that's we better wrap this up. Follow Tre, send this to a friend that needs a wake-up call, and leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast. And we will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast. Thank you, my friend.
No problem, Jay.